the board is in agreement.
I'll second.
Motion second. We'll call vote. Sherry?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Oh, yes, the motion passes. Now we have item 2, public hearing. Public hearing for Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area to discuss the adoption of the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020. Alan Ray, our fabulous finance director. Where is he?
He just walked out.
Somebody want to track down Alan? And we'll ad-lib for a moment before he comes in. He probably forgot that we were doing this first. So,
Oh, there he is.
oh, Alan, you're on. So, or the HCC budget. So I just reminded everybody this is our anniversary of when we voted to separate.
Also my 43rd wedding anniversary.
Oh, my goodness.
We're just chalking it up tonight. It's my daughter's 18th birthday tonight.
Okay, first of all, on the agenda today, we have an HCC meeting where we need to have a public hearing for our budget. Following that, we have a CDA meeting. Both of these budgets, even though they're separate organizations, are considered component units of our city budget. So although we have to have the separate city meeting for these two budgets, they are part of our overall city budget. The HCC budget this year is on, I think 267 is the page number in our city budget. The HCC is strictly a taxing authority where we receive taxes for our police entity. We are budgeting this year to receive $6.2 million. All of that is scheduled then to be transferred to the general fund to cover the costs of what we have for our police for the year. So that's the budget we have for HCC this year that we're asking you to do a public hearing on.
And just to clarify, that is not an increase in the rate. It is simply an increase due to our population growth.
That's true. Nothing changes.
So this is items on for public hearing. Do you have any public comments? Nobody?
Good evening. My name is Ken Adamson. I live in District 3. I'm a little bit concerned with the rate of growth in Harriman, population growth, especially the high-density housing at the north end. It seems like it's out of control considering the infrastructure that's not built in yet. There's not well, we have one east-west corridor, Bangerter. Other than that, we're locked in here. So I would just ask you to consider maybe a year moratorium on high-density housing while you discuss amongst yourselves, this Salt Lake County Council, the Wasatch Association of Governments, to see how the county wants to grow. I don't think that Harriman needs to grow as fast as it is. I think the new police department, I don't know, it seems like maybe it was budgeted based on the state of Harriman a year ago or two ago, but with all this new high-density housing, which creates a pressure cooker, people living above, below, and next to each other, you're probably gonna have some issues, a lot more issues than we had 2 years ago. So I just would like you to slow down. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. We're not allowed to, well, I guess on this one's public hearing, we can discuss everything, huh?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Fantastic. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close the
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Seeing
Second.
none, We can have a motion to close the second.
I was just excited to make a motion.
Motion and a second.
I'll do it very often.
David?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So public hearing's closed. Discussion amongst the council. Go first. So I'll address Mr. Abson's concerns. I would say that everyone, including Councilman Smith, Councilwoman Martin, agree with you regarding the high-density housing. Everything that you see in that area was actually approved like 10 years ago. And it's all governed by master development agreements that were put in place at that time that we actually can't change. So that's a huge frustration to all of us. We're a relatively new council. Councilwoman Martin and I came in 2016. The other three came in last year. So we're definitely doing everything we can to mitigate a lot of those things. Creating our police force in-house has mitigated a lot of those concerns. Chief Carr gave a great report last meeting showing heat maps of where the problem areas are, and where the density is concentrated is definitely those hot spots that we see. In regards to the HCC, to give you kind of a brief history of where we're at, what we did, well, there's been a few different steps. So the HCC is a taxing district. We were previously part of SLVISA, the Salt Lake Valley Law Enforcement Service Area, that collected property taxes from Harriman, Riverton, and all of unincorporated Salt Lake County and put it in one big pool. That pool was governed by a 5-member board, 3 from Salt Lake County, 1 representative from Harriman, 1 representative from Riverton. So we never really had control of the money. They just handed it over to UPD and told us this is what you get. So over the past, I'll say going on 4 years now. It's my 4th year, and we started this. That was my first meeting as an elected official, was Levisa, and I said, this isn't good. We worked to separate that, create our own taxing district, so now we collect the taxes specifically to be used for law enforcement. We can't commingle it with other city functions, et cetera. So as our population increases, that money goes directly to law enforcement. So
In our community.
in our community, it stays right here. We make that decision a year ago, this meeting a year ago, because we were in control of the money. We gave notice to UPD at that time that we were not going to pay the bill that they were giving us for the services they told us they were going to provide. We were going to do it ourselves. And we've been able to do that. We went from, and correct me if I'm wrong in my numbers, I like to say we doubled our number of officers. I mean, like the count fluctuated a little bit. We had roughly 18 officers for the same amount of money that we're paying. We've doubled that to 36 plus support staff, plus all the extra stuff, our K9, SWAT, et cetera. It's been a huge difference. I got a text actually last night from a friend and resident. I'll read this to you, because I think it really, if I didn't delete it already, I think it really illustrates it. Sorry.
Really popular.
All points. I'll make sure I get the right one. Here it is. Okay. He says, quick story about the police, which we both know who drove that, right? Harriman really drove the changes that you're seeing. He says, my daughter was being stalked by some kid while she was on a date with another boy. This is last night. The stalker drove by her house when she got dropped off. Harriman PD already pulled the kid over for suspicious behavior before we could even get to the phone. Think about this. Think about what other crimes never happen because of the better policing we have. Maybe this crime doesn't happen because the police are actually in the area policing, which we didn't have. And I went on to explain to him that we actually have a police force that's in our community. They work for us. They don't leave our boundaries unless there's a big event that they need our help. And they're actually policing the area. What we had before was kind of a response service. If something happened, they'd come out here from other areas. So we're seeing a huge difference as far as law enforcement. The high-density housing, we all agree with that. Some of the efforts that are going on regarding transportation, infrastructure, et cetera, it's a big focus for us as a council. I'm our representative for a group called the Southwest Mayor's Caucus. Riverton, Bluffdale, Harriman, South Jordan, West Jordan, and Copperton have banded together, and we're meeting on a regular basis to work towards better infrastructure in this area, to try to work with the county. We're opening lines of communications with the county council and working towards all of those things. So those efforts are ongoing. We've got a study in the works right now. We've got funding from the county, Wasatch Front Regional Council, and each city's chipping in a little bit, $250,000 to do a comprehensive study of the southwest corner of the valley to analyze the growth patterns, analyze what has been done versus existing plans, the shortage of infrastructure, let alone what the infrastructure needs to be built up to do the things that they think they want to do.
Just to clarify, that's $250,000 total for the study, not from each city, correct?
For the study, yes. So we're working on a lot of those things. So please stay engaged, come and give us your opinions, share the information with others that are out there, but we're trying to do a lot. You guys have anything to add
No,
to that?
I just, you mentioned if a concern about does the budget cover the growth on our police department? And the nice thing about having our own police department is that we can be intimately involved in making sure that happens. That Chief Cart is, who we've entrusted to make sure that his department does cover that growth. And because we'll continue to see it, what you're seeing out by our cell, it's going to continue to happen because of what Jared just said. There are several other big chunks of land in our city that are going to see, you know, some of this more dense housing because it's already been approved and entitled. So the only thing we can really do is continue to rely upon this team to make sure that that growth is covered. And some of the growth comes with tax revenue that helps cover that. So we will continue to, obviously to keep a good monitor on that to make sure that that happens.
I'll just add one more monetary point because it's just a soapbox issue of mine is property taxes. Please, please look at your property taxes. The city receives almost nothing from actual property tax. It all goes to, the majority goes to the school district and then police, fire, and the county. There's a very small fraction that actually goes to the city, mosquito abatement, and a few little programs, but the majority is those things, the school district, police, fire, and the county. So the importance of having control of the money for our law enforcement and our community is paramount. So having the Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area taxing district where we control the money, every new house that's built, that money comes here, it goes to our department, it hires new cops to grow with us, rather than that money going to a general pool and being, you know, spread out across the county. So I think just since we've been up and running since the end of September, I mean, I think it's a night and day difference from the force that we have, and as we grow, that will continue, so. It's a bigger discussion than we've had on this item in a long time.
I think that's the
All year long.
most discussion we've ever had in this particular meeting.
Anything else from council? Any
No, I think-
discussion, questions,
Have we accomplished what we needed to accomplish, Alan, on this?
motion?
Okay, move to adjourn the Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area meeting.
Actually, we want to,
we went
we
to-
want approval of our,
We already closed the public hearing. Do we need to do anything else? So, no, we just need to close our meeting? Okay, move to adjourn.
Second?
got a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call? Everybody?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, with that, I'll take over for our second meeting before our regular meeting. I'll try to get through this one as relatively quickly as possible. It's our Community Development and Renewal Agency of Harriman City. Item 1.1, motion for review and outline of the finalization process to approve the minutes for May 22nd.
I'll make a motion to have the minutes of May 22nd, 2019 be prepared and distributed to each member of the Redevelopment Agency Board. The board will have 10 days to review the minutes and submit any changes to the secretary. If after 10 days there are no changes, the minutes will stand approved. If there are changes, the process will be followed until all changes are made and the board is in agreement.
Second.
Motion is second. Jared?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
I'll vote yes, that motion passes. We have a couple of public hearing items. Please be aware that comments will be limited to 2 minutes, and the council is only able to, or the board is only able to discuss items that appear on the agenda. And before that, our first item, public hearing for the Community Development and Renewal Agency of Harriman to discuss the adoption of the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020. Alan?
Okay, just so you understand, there's 2 items on this agenda for the budget. Mine is looking at what we budgeted for this fiscal year, what we intend. Then Heather's going to talk to you about the overall budget for the whole project. That's what she's looking at. I'm only looking at what we're spending this year. Again, this is part of our overall city budget. The CDA is a separate government agency, but as it falls under the rules of a component unit of the city, it is reported as part of our budget and part of our financial statements. We are budgeting this year for one of our CDAs to receive $2,392,000 in property taxes. That will totally be used to pay the two bonds that we have in the SAA area. We've got the SAA bond, which was the original infrastructure. We also have the tax incentive bond, which paid for the U Road and part of the park. So the property taxes we're receiving from the Harriman Town Center CDA are covering those two bonds at this point. Now, what what she has will eventually show some of that money coming back to us and some of it going to the developer to cover costs. But at this point, it's all completely covering our bond debt. You know, and that's one thing I point out is it does look like the city has a lot of bonded debt, but we have 20 million of our debt that is actually covered by tax incentive money that's being paid by other entities besides us. And so even though it shows that 20 million bucks on our debt schedule, it's being paid by tax incentive that's essentially coming from the school district and the county and the police and fire and these other agencies that Mayor Henderson was just talking about. Our other...
Councilman.
Council member,
What's that?
you just promoted him.
Okay. Now, the other...
Don't call me names yet.
The other Harriman CDA is the one down at the soccer stadium. It's just starting up. We're in our second year of getting funds. We budget in that this year that we probably will get about $1 million. We'll, at that point, start to be getting enough money that we'll start distributing it based on the plan that Heather is doing. But that's the total of the budgets for these two CDAs at this point.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will accept, or open the public hearing at this time. If you have any comment, please come up to the podium and state your name and give us your comment, please. Okay, seeing none, I accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, item 2.2, public hearing and consideration of a resolution to adopt the Harriman North Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan and Budget dated April 2019. Heather Upshaw.
Hello. So I just have a brief presentation. So it is a new CRA, Community Reinvestment Area. This is the Harriman North Community Reinvestment Area. And I will just go over it as PowerPoint's coming up. Okay, do I click myself? Thanks, John. So Alan discussed some of the current CRAs that we have, but it just shows here on the map. So we have Anthem Town Center, Harriman Town Center, Harriman Business Center, and then this new CRA is the North Harriman. So the Anthem Town Center just triggered this year, so that is why Alan didn't talk about that one in the budget. Here is the boundary of the Harriman North CRA. This is our auto mall area.
That was fast.
Here we go. Just a few terms in this CRA. It's a 15-year CRA. It's approximately 117 acres. This is only sales tax, so we're not asking for participation from any of the property taxing entities. 70% of the sales tax generated would go to the agency. It's almost 15 million, and 30% would pass through to the city. That's 7.3 million.
Which is 7.3 million that we're not getting if it doesn't develop.
Correct. And this will fund infrastructure, public water, street, grading, sewer, and then also to incentivize auto dealerships. Any questions of me?
Well, just correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole point of these community development areas is that we are incentivizing business to our economic development. so that there is some tax revenue, and even though we're not taking all of it, it's better than getting nothing, correct?
Correct. These should be but-for, so without the help of these CRAs, we wouldn't get these sort of developments.
So if we didn't do this, we would get no tax benefit, which means, so we're not spending any additional money. We're just saying we're going to share the tax revenue to help
Yes.
build it, and we're going to get more than we would have anyways.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will go ahead and open the public hearing for this particular item. If you have any public hearing items, please come up to the podium and state your name. Okay, oh, please.
Just curious, my name's Ken Adamson again. Just curious on the quality of the proposed dealerships that might move in. Are we doing Larry Miller? Are we doing low book sales? You know, if it's a bunch of used car dealers, that's one thing. If it's a bunch of, you know, top line things, that's totally different.
Required to be new dealerships. There are no used. They're required to be new.
Well, let's finish your comment, and then
Okay.
once we've gone through comment, we can address some of those items.
All right?
Did you have any other comments?
Do you have any
I
other
have no
comments?
other
Okay,
comments.
so if you take a seat for us, if there's any other individuals that would like to speak at the public hearing at this time, we would invite you to come up at this time. Okay, seeing none, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion passes. Okay, so just to address, as Councilman Hendricks was saying, we've gone through a pretty extensive process on this, and one of the things he was trying to clarify was that these will be new car dealerships. There will be some used car sales from those new car dealerships, just as any new car dealership would have some used car sales, but these are intended to be new car dealerships, not just your run-of-the-mill, somebody goes out and buys cars at auctions and sells them at, as used cars.
And Michael, I don't know if you want to clarify, if we actually put it in part of the zoning, correct?
Yes, we've been anticipating that in order to establish these new dealerships, there may be a phasing plan where they are like there would be a percentage of sales or stock where initially there may be more used cars but there'll be a phase plan where after so many years they have to be a fully established new dealership.
So we wanted to avoid
Yeah.
the low end,
Right.
yeah,
And-
that sort of thing. So we actually built it into the zoning of the area.
And much of that is already, of what we've discussed and gone over with those specific requirements, it's already been made public. So if you would, afterwards, if you want to meet with Michael, who's our city planner, he'd be happy to give you some of those details.
Those are great questions and concerns, and if anybody has any others, this is a big deal, and people are just kind of learning about it. We've been having these discussions for, probably over a year in preparation, doing the zoning and planning, et cetera. But as it starts to come to fruition, I think there's more media about it, and people are finding out. So please bring us your questions and concerns.
I will just address a concern that I just heard from a resident a while ago about the concern about even doing these types of incentives. They were upset about why cities even go down this path. And I could say in a way, I 100% understand her concerns. It's been conversations I've had many times too. It seems like what people should do is go there and set up a business and do your business. It shouldn't have to have all these incentives constantly, but I can promise you that they won't come without them. The competition is just so stiff that if there's not incentives, we can't entice them. We live in an area that is kind of unique, and we live off the main grid per se, and so there has to be certain incentives given to entice them, and we try to be very, very careful with these incentives that they're not negative to the taxpayers, that they are truly incentives, but they are spread out and scheduled in such a way that we are still receiving a benefit from that, and we get 100% of nothing if they don't come, or we get a percentage of something if they do come, and after time, those incentives play out, and then we receive the full benefit of it. So it's just the atmosphere that we are in right now, that we're trying to, if we don't get a tax base here, we will be in trouble. So we're trying to create that and establish that, and that's the game we're in.
We really have to give credit to our staff as well. They've worked long and hard on putting some of these deals together in creative ways to do it, in ways that do incentivize them to come to kind of a pocket that's not on the way to anywhere. We're off the beaten path, as it were, and in ways that not only incentivize them to come, but safeguard the city, where we don't have the risk of it. So if the business doesn't come to fruition or they're not as successful, we're not on the hook for anything, and we hopefully have built in those safeguards into the zoning and planning and the agreements that whoever comes after them have to live up to those same standards, et cetera. So thank you.
Yeah, there's the city and our residents aren't on the hook for any additional taxes or anything due to this agreement. So if nothing ever happens, our residents are not out. It's really just a positive for us to encourage this economic development so we can keep our taxes down.
Oh my gosh, this phone, it's a timer.
We were talking about animal control earlier.
All right, then.
It's on
With
silent.
that, I will accept a motion.
Oh my goodness.
All right, we're
It's on silent, I swear, I have no idea.
We're approving the motion, all right, so a motion to approve resolution number R2019-07, adopting community development project area plan and budget entitled Harriman North Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan and Budget dated April 2019.
It's almost as bad as saying Salvisa.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jared?
Aye.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I will vote yes, that motion passes. All right, I will accept a motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn. Second.
Second. I'm
All in
so
favor?
tired.
Aye.
Aye. So you have now sat through 2 meetings. Now we will start our city council meeting. You guys excited? I can tell. There's just so much enthusiasm in the room.
You know better than me.
All right, so we will go ahead and call to order our city council general meeting for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Caden Thatcher.
Please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Caden. We appreciate your participation in our meeting. Item 5.2, any comments or recognitions by the city council today? Okay. All right, we will move on to our public comment session of our meeting. Audience members may bring any item to the city council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law does prohibit the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. However, you may bring them up to us at this time. So if you would like to make a public comment at this time, please come up to the podium and state your name and give us your comment.
Hey guys, Teddy Hodges, Harriman resident. Just want to say how much fun we had at Pedalpalooza 2 weekends ago. Thanks for some of the city management and leadership showing up. We had a great time. We gave out almost 200 helmets, I believe. We gave away 8 bikes and lots of raffle prizes. We had a lot of community involvement, not only from vendors, but from the participants. I think we had almost 400 kids there. Police, fire showed up. We had a great representation. So good for the city, and there's lots of more fun events coming up. So thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Teddy.
Dave.
And for those that don't know, Teddy here does a lot for our community and making sure we are involved in these projects, and we appreciate the work that all of our community members put into these types of these types of events and projects. Any other comment at this time? Please.
Hi, Mayor and City Council member. My name is Carlos Moreno. I'm from Venezuela. I am a resident here in Harriman. I just want to talk about how the growing of the city is growing faster, When I came here 9 years ago, was a totally different city, county than is now. My concern is about try to create like a more awareness in the minorities community to try to, because I think I see by observation the minorities community don't have that connection with the local government and all the kind of government. Also, we have people that they don't even they don't want to call the police because they afraid for nothing, But because I know our police department and everybody here is ready to help. And I would like to propose, make a proposal to you to think about it, to create the cultural diversity committee to try to create a bridge between the minorities communities who have a lot of challenges with language, culture, and also another cultural problems that they don't feel connected with the government. For me, it's important. I have two sons, 8 years old in Atlas Academy and 1 year old, and I'm concerned about them in their future to be connected with you. You know how wrong this country, and we need to learn from you. We don't want to learn from anyone. My country was, you can see my country is crazy right now. I saw the destruction of my country. I don't want that happen here. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks, Carlos.
Carlos, we appreciate your comment, and it sounds like somebody volunteered to participate in our community, so we're going to be reaching out to you, I'm sure. Any other comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment portion of our meeting. City Council board and committee reports.
I don't.
I got a few. So I don't want to say too much about this because there's a lot in the media, but I want to say enough that our residents know what's going on. We have separated from Unified Police Department as far as our operations go, but we're still finalizing our actual legal separation. So there's some of that in the news. What has happened is that we were trying to reach an actual agreement to settle the rest of the assets, as it were. There's a statute of limitations that ran out on Monday where we had to file suit as basically a placeholder. Just in that statute of limitations, we're still continuing those conversations, and I think the media is kind of blowing things out of proportion a little bit. So we're just in talks to try to carve up the pie and get everything settled. But our police force is up and running and doing a fantastic job. Second, the next committee report would be from the Southwest Mayor's Caucus, which I mentioned already. Our study is well underway. They've put it out for RFP. They've had several applicants come back. I forwarded this information to a bunch of you guys. We're meeting this next week to discuss some of the applications that were put in and go through that finalization process, so you should start seeing some movement on that soon. And then the last thing we found out today, actually, I've been asked to participate on a task force that the governor's putting together on local impact fees, which are the impact fees that are collected from new development that go directly to the roads, sewers, et cetera, in those areas. So hopefully we'll have some say on some of that stuff coming up.
Okay. We'll move on to our reports and presentation portion. Item 8.1, a snow removal report for 2018-2019. Ed Blackett, he's our street manager. He's around here somewhere. There he is. And while he's on his way up, I'll just tell you guys that our streets and outdoor crew did a great job this year, and we're very, very proud of them, and this is the proof.
Thank you. Council, Mayor, everyone. I'm going to give you a rundown of the 2018-19 snow season. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask. This year we experienced 29 snow and/or ice events where there were 3 or more trucks dispatched. That's probably about 10 more than I've seen in my years here. It's quite a few events. Along with that, there are combined plow miles of 14,471. So that's not listed here, but I did the math, and 14,000 plowed miles.
Hey, Ed, we mentioned it in the work meeting, but for those that have mentioned our astonishing growth, how many lane miles are we averaging that are being added to that every year?
Currently, we're plowing 301 lane miles, 240 cul-de-sacs. The last lane mile count I seen was about 280. And I don't think that was more than last year. That's probably about last year was 280. As I look at these maps and I talk to the guys that make the maps, I feel kind of lucky. I don't know how everybody else feels, but a lot of these new developments happen to be HOAs, which help me out. You know, those miles aren't mine to plow, so all the development you see doesn't necessarily mean that we plow it, so.
Good.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's fantastic, and if I could add just a little bit, a few of the developments that have come in for this current council to approve, we made sure one large one that there was an HOA in place so that those costs are transferred there, and that responsibility isn't the city's. So we're trying to be conscious of those things as we continue to grow.
Very good, thank you. This is the snow fighter rotation schedule. This schedule is made up of all departments, all outside departments, street lights, water, parks. All those people are put onto this schedule with the exception of 2 that we recruit from inside. If the amount of people works out, the amount that I have, I can make up a schedule where they're on 1, off 2. So 7 days they'll be on rotation, asked to answer the phone, respond, and come to work and plow. These guys are called out late nights, early mornings. They come in, they get in the plow trucks, they plow throughout the night. Most of them, when 7 o'clock comes, they jump in their regular duty truck and off they go to do their normal work day. And the street department takes over at that point. This is a map of the city that's divided into 3 zones. The red roads are considered high priority. These are roads around schools, collector roads to main roads. We focus on these first. The blue roads are secondary roads, of course. Cul-de-sacs come after that. And here's where we talk about 301 lane miles. We plowed 240 cul-de-sacs and 59 miles of sidewalk and trail with each storm. This year we went through 2,859 tons of salt. It was a lot more salt than we've typically gone through. We do our best to use the salt efficiently. We calibrate our trucks. We teach our drivers. We train our drivers. And our goal is to put about 200 pounds of salt per lane mile. We used about 75% of our salt budget this year. Maintenance was a big one this year. You can see we're at about 98% of budget. We're working with equipment that's 10 years old, same equipment we've used for quite a few years. We do, however, use a snowplow blade that has proved to be very beneficial. It costs a little more than most snowplow blades, most carbide snowplow blades, but we get about 3 times the use out of this one. However, the blades were affected by the chip seal this year. The roughness of the chip seal really gave our blades a workout. Here we have a picture. It's a picture of the park, but it's indicating a pass with our brine distribution truck. The brine has been laid down in the black portion of the asphalt there, and it's just to indicate how well brine works. The outside of the black is normal snow. It's collecting, it's freezing, and where the brine was applied is black and safe to drive on.
I just have to note, Ed, it was mentioned in our work meeting for this apparatus and a lot of the other things we do, our enormously talented employees actually build this equipment for us. We save a lot of money by using the talents of our employees to put these things together and be inventive and empower them to do things like this.
That's correct, yeah. We put together this brine facility. We bought the brine manufacturing system. It's capable of producing about 800 gallons of brine an hour. The 2 tanks there, they're 5,000 gallon each, so we can stockpile brine and keep up with the demand. Brine is very beneficial, and we're going to increase the use of brine if budget is approved.
I just want to go off of what Councilman Henderson said here as well. So brine just is one, cheaper for the city to maintain roads, which provides a better quality of road because it's instantaneously effective, because you guys can put it down several days in advance, correct?
That is correct.
So for those young drivers who may have noticed weird white lines painted on the ground right before the snowstorms, that was actually our trucks going out and putting down this salt solution on the road and letting it dry. And it stays there for several days. When we have the storm, it is immediately effective, and they don't have to go out and try to plow or try to put salt down at that point. It's already there and already working. So not only is it cheaper, it's more effective. The employees, the city staff did it in-house with no real direction from us to make this happen, and are saving our residents money and providing them better service. And that's just a fantastic call out that we want to make sure we emphasize, that our employees are doing everything they can to save your money and provide you with better service. And this is a prime example of that.
Thank you. The one thing we struggle with certain times of the year with brine application is the forecast. If the forecast is such that we're going to receive rain prior to snow, it's pointless to put brine down. So it's kind of a, do I or don't I kind of thing. So this slide here just indicates the amount of hours that we put in. This is cumulative hours of all the workforce. The one thing that's different, a little bit different with this year, is at 7 o'clock when the water department gets in their truck and they do their normal water duties during the day, the street department takes over and does the snow plowing for the day. We spent a little more time snow plowing during the day this year. There's more storms, more miles. We spend a little more time as the street department doing it during the day. And that's kind of indicated there. And that's it. That one.
Awesome.
Any more comments from the council?
Just thank you. Please tell all of the staff, thank you. You guys do a fantastic job. I know it's one of the things we consistently get the most compliments about from the public is how good a job we do, but not just that, especially compared to surrounding areas. It's just amazing. As I commute out of the city every day, there's a drastic difference as you leave Harriman or enter Harriman. So thank you very much.
We appreciate it. So with that, we'll move on to the other report that you're going to give us, which is our 2019 spring cleanup report.
Yeah, so we just finished up spring cleanup around the first week of May. Week one, we have 3 locations. And some of these locations have been locations that we've used for years. It seems like, well, not only seems like it is, that these locations are getting busier. If you look at the picture here, we're really struggling with items put in the containers that we really shouldn't have to deal with. These are tires, paint. We have plaques on the containers indicating that these items shouldn't be put in there. These containers that you see here, we had to take those back to the yard. We had to dump them on the ground, sift through them, pull out all of the items, the paint and tires that can't go to the landfill or shouldn't. And we deal with that stuff separately, so. That was a big struggle this year with the items that shouldn't go in there. And the information's posted on the website too. You know, they put out the schedule, they put what cannot be put into dumpsters, and we still get it. Anyway, here's another picture of those very same items. Another 3-location week. Some of the totals for that week. This picture just kind of shows you what we deal with when we get to the landfill. This is a Saturday. If you know the road going into the landfill, you know we're just inside the gate here. These trucks wait in this line for about an hour to get to the scale house, and then they're another, 20 minutes to get back to the container site. So we struggle with time at the landfill. I don't know how you can get around that on a Saturday. It's a nice sunny day. Everybody's going to the landfill.
Well, they were giving free compost, so.
Yeah, and then we did, like I say, run into the free compost Saturday, which caused us a little grief that day too. The totals on there. This slide indicates Butterfield Park, which was the biggest. I don't know what happened to this slide. It got ski-wampus. But Butterfield Park, for whatever reason, the week 4 was hit the hardest. You can see the containers are overflowing. We couldn't get to the landfill and back before they were full. And in the one slide here, we have an individual that brought an entire cab-over camper.
They brought an RV or a camper to throw away in a dumpster.
That's bigger than the dumpster.
That's bigger than the dumpster.
It's awesome.
So
I mean, just drive it a couple more miles down the road to the
Well,
dump.
he towed it with his tractor.
But we had not specifically indicated that that was not allowed, so in the future, we will make sure that we are more clear.
He had the rules, and
Campers
nowhere
not
did it
allowed.
say he couldn't bring camper. But he also talked our crew into bringing out a Mini-X and demolishing it for him and putting it in the dumpster. So-
Which is so far above and beyond what we would have expected of you, so thank you.
So, anyway, we did, however, include the Prairie Oaks Park. Not a lot of business there. It's kind of slow, it's first year, but it was kind of slow. But I think the majority of that week went to Butterfield Park. Here's totals for the spring cleanup. You can see it's considerably more than the fall cleanup for the same fiscal year.
And that was due to the labor cost, correct?
And the landfill costs, yeah. Everything was up this spring cleanup.
I think it's just so important for people to understand that if you're bringing a dumpster back to the yard and having to dump it out, fish through it, get all the stuff out of it, reload it, take it, and then haul it off, it significantly drives up labor costs.
That's true.
That's why it's so important to follow the guidelines on the dumpster. It's a service that the city is offering to allow this convenience, but if you abuse it, then it drives up the cost, and then at some point it doesn't pencil to continue to offer the service. So it's so really important to follow the guidelines. Don't dump paint in there. Don't use it as your tire recycling. There's processes that you can do that, get rid of those types of waste. This isn't the correct way to do it.
And it's not only the manpower to separate the material, but there is an additional cost for us to take the tires to the recycler, take the paint, and deal with that in addition to everything else.
I agree with Sherry, really, what we need residents to understand, students that are here taking notes. This is an issue for us because it's gonna be a growing problem. This is not just a service we provide, it's an extra service we provide. It's not a critical service. It's not something that has to be done in the operation of the city. It's more, we use the word luxury in our work meeting. It's a luxury that has an increasing cost largely due to the abuse of the service. So we're gonna reach kind of a breaking point at some point as we continue to grow and it continues to be abused of, is it worth it to provide this extra service versus other competing interests? So we need help. Please don't put paint and tires and refrigerators and campers.
And campers, yeah.
We've got a little work to do with how we're gonna mitigate that.
Yeah, and the problem is we can put extra people out there to police these types of things, extra employees, but again,
labor.
that just
Costs
drives
more.
up the labor costs. So the public has to self-police these things and just simply don't do it.
That would be nice, yeah.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it for you.
Thank you.
Ed.
Awesome,
All
thanks,
right,
Ed.
we appreciate it. All right, now, we will move on to the public hearing portion of this meeting. And we have a couple of items for public hearing for tonight. Same rules will apply as earlier with the public comment. You'll be limited to 2 minutes. And we will ask you to come up to the front and state your name before you begin. With that, we'll move on to item 9.1, public hearing to discuss the tentative fiscal year 2019-2020 Harriman City budget and to amend the fiscal year 2018-2019 Harriman City budget.
Mayor, council, our meeting 2 weeks ago, the council approved the tentative budget. It's been publicized now for 2 weeks. Published copies, there's online. I don't know how many times communications pushed it out that it was available to look at, but it's been available to public online 2 weeks now, or it could be picked up here at the office. So, as you know, we've been in the process of the budget since the first week of January. In different phases, we presented the tentative budget to the council on April 10th. We've had numerous opportunities to talk about it, to go through it. As I mentioned, it was approved at the last meeting. It's been available for public. We are now required to have a public hearing, and we are required to adopt the final budget no later than June 20th. Since our next meeting falls on June 12th, that's the day we anticipate adopting the final budget. So I would just want to point out a few highlights to the budget. The budget is available, like I say, it's many hundred pages long, but here's some highlights. First of all, as you look at revenue in the budget in our general fund, we are budgeting $31,262,000 this year in general fund revenue. That is up from $26,775,000 last year. So our revenue is projected to go up 16.75%. Then you look at our expenditures. Our expenditures in the current budget are $25,678,000 compared to $22,825,000 last year. So our revenue is going up 16.75%. Our expenditures are going up 11.1%. The majority of that difference will be transferred to our capital projects funds that will go towards road and storm drain projects. So we're growing at a quick rate. Our expenses are not growing as fast as our revenue's growing. We have some significant changes in revenue this year. Our revenue from The HCC that we just talked about will be going up roughly $2 million this year because we have a full year this year. We didn't have a full year last year. As always, our building permits are going up again this year, we expect. Sales tax is going to have a significant increase this year because of the 0.25% sales tax that was increased by the county this year. So we see some increases in several areas. Here's just a highlight of where our revenues come from. We get about 30% of our taxes from, or our revenue from taxes. Now, most of this, as Councilman Henderson said earlier, is not property taxes. 90-something% of our tax revenue comes from sales tax and franchise tax. We only get a couple of percent of our total taxes from property taxes.
So if you don't mind, Alan, I always dwell on this because it's something I hear all the time from even my friends and neighbors is I pay my taxes to the city. The city receives virtually nothing from property tax.
And in fact, you pay your taxes to the county and they distribute them, and we get distributed 2.4% of the total taxes paid by our residents.
Right, and I find it also interesting, and I appreciate libraries, don't get me wrong, but the Salt Lake County libraries get almost 4% of our taxes, but your local city only gets about 2% of your local taxes. So the library system actually gets double what your local, what this local city is receiving.
And, you know, we work constantly on sales tax, try and get enough sales tax to run the city, and that's our main source of tax revenue. We get, as I said, 2.4% of the property taxes that are paid by our residents, so relatively little. Our sales taxes last year was about $4.5 million. Our total property tax from our residents was just over $700,000. So it's relatively insignificant in our total. So out of 31 million of revenue this year, 700,000 of it is coming from property taxes. And this is where our revenue go, or our expenditures go. You'll see parks is a big part of our budget at 15%. Our police are a big part at 23%. Operations, which is mainly our streets.
Public safety is both our police and our...
What's that?
Is public safety both fire and police, or is it just police?
This is police.
Just police.
And operations at 16% is primarily our roads. You'll see that we have 17% of our general fund money that is being transferred to go to capital projects to build projects that we're trying to do. So, you know, we're not spending all of our general fund money on general operating expenditures. We're setting aside a pretty good chunk to try and upgrade roads and do the projects that are on our priority list. Okay, I just wanted to point out here, because it is a question from our public about, is the police department costing us more than it did prior? And you'll see from this slide, we are expecting revenue, and this is not just property tax revenue, this is property tax. This will be money from the school district for our school resource officers. All of the revenues that we get, we're expecting $7.3 million. We are projecting $7.2 million in expenditures for the police. So we will actually be $90,576 less than our expected revenues, with no change and no increase in our tax rate. Now, I will mention, though, to the man that spoke earlier, our tax collection is going up $250,000 or $300,000 a year because of the growth that we have. So we are growing our police department because of new growth.
That's population growth, correct?
Population growth. It's not new taxes to our residents, it's new growth that's giving us additional revenue. So police are getting additional money each year to grow the police department, but that's based on new growth. We're not raising our rate to our residents, it's not changing. And this just shows you that our expenditures this year are going to be less than our revenue with no change in tax rate.
So if I could, for those that are paying attention or have an interest in this time last year, I was our member on the board of UPD as we were looking at our quote budget, which is basically the bill they were giving us for services. Started the year at about 4.1, almost 4.2 million. And by the time we got to May, when they were approving their budget, they had increased it to nearly 5 million. It was an $800,000 to $900,000 increase with no increase in services. And Alan and I questioned it to very lengthy, to the nth degree, and basically we're stonewalled. We couldn't get answers of why we were having this increase. Right. And I'll speak for myself personally and for other council members we had done a lot of other homework leading up to that, but that was a great illustration of the fact that now that we control the money, if you can't answer our questions of what services you're providing for that money, we have the option to do something else with it, which is why we are where we are now. So if we're collecting this much in tax revenue prior to us creating our own police force, this would just go to basically a general fund at the county. They use it how they want and tell us what services we'll get. By separating things, creating our own taxing district, we control the money. We have our own police force. We keep it in-house. They're here. It's a gigantic difference.
Over 10 years, we got one new police officer in the old model? Something like that?
Yeah, barely.
Barely a police officer in the old model over the course of 10 years, and we doubled the size of our city?
So really, in terms of total dollars, as Alan mentioned, yes, total dollars collected has gone up as a virtue of new growth. So the new property tax collected into the agency, tax rates have not gone up a penny, but that new growth stays here. We can hire new officers and take care of our community versus that new growth going to other areas to help them.
Which we are this year. How many new staff members are we adding in our department?
This year, we're adding one new SRO sergeant, 2 officers, and a full-time records clerk.
So 3 officers or 3 sworn officers and 1 administrator.
And a civilian.
We went from 18 officers to 36.
Yeah, we will be at 38 officers this year and 4 civilians.
Huge difference.
Okay. Just then on our other impact fee funds, which are project funds, first of all, we are not budgeting any expenditures from our general capital projects fund. We are still making up for the property we built to keep it out of high-density housing. So for this period of time, till we get that back on even plane, we are not budgeting anything coming from that fund. This coming year, we're budgeting $4.2 million in park projects, $1.6 million in storm drain impact fee projects, $3.675 million in road impact fee fund projects, $770 in our streetlight fund, and $200,000 in our street sign fund. These are all construction projects that will be paid for with impact fees. They are restricted on how we can use them. We can't use them for anything except what they're designated for. So we've identified our highest priorities in each of these funds, and that's what we intend to pay this year. In our enterprise fund, our water fund, we are intending to spend $1.276 million for water fund projects that do not qualify for impact fee. This will come directly from our water operating fund. We expect to buy $2.58 million of water rights, and we've been accumulating water rights very quickly, trying to make sure that we have water rights for our residents. And then we'll have another $2.2 million of water impact fee fund projects. Again, the impact fee projects are limited to being used for what they were intended. So those are the highlights of our budget this year. It's hard to give you a highlight of 300-something pages, but that's an overview of, I think, what you'll see as you go through our budget and look at what we're proposing for this year. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Alan. With that, we will go ahead and move to the public hearing portion of this item. If you would like to make comment on the budget, this is your opportunity in this meeting. Please come up to the mic and state your name and give us your comment at this time.
I'm so glad you came tonight, Ken.
We love it.
Curious.
Somebody to talk to.
The park budget, I noticed in my bills, I'm charged a fee. I don't know if it's every month or how long it is, but there's a fee that residents pay for parks. And I noticed that parks were 25% of the overall expenditures. I'm just wondering if the fees generated from residents paying those cover the 25% of the budget.
We will address that as soon as we're done with the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Then the other thing is, if we're paying the park fees as residents, then that tells me that maybe the county's not, and if you got Black Ridge Reservoir filled with people from all over the county coming up there, could there be somebody at a toll booth saying, you know, if you're a resident, you get a sticker, you can participate, otherwise you're gonna pay a fee at the gate? Just an idea. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public input at this time? He's so ready to answer questions.
Yeah, no. This is probably directed to you, but are we looking, I see that we got some good windfalls. We're definitely in the black, so that's good with our budget, but anticipating growth and development for the 5-10 year, the 90,000 residents we're gonna have in this corner in 2030 or whatever that is. How are we projecting that? Obviously, the economic development will help, and we've had some good growth in the budgetary or the revenue costs, but are we taking those projections out past and that windfall we have right now for our special projects and developments? How are we saving that or investing that to future investments?
Okay. Any other public would like to speak to this item? With that, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Alan, if you could please come and address some of those questions as best you can.
Okay, first of all, on the park fee, we charge $5 a month per residence. We don't charge anything to commercial or industrial. That $5 a month generates about $770 a year, $70,000 a year, $770,000 a year. Our parks are costing us about $3.2 million in this current budget.
Is that construction of new parks or maintenance? Or
No, this is
both?
just maintenance. We have construction of new parks in there at 4.2 in the impact fees, but that's just maintenance of our current parks is a little over $3 million. We're collecting $700,000 a year in the park fee. So we're a little less than 25% coming from the park fee. The rest is coming from general fund.
So if I know your back's killing you, I sympathize. So if I can make a distinction for the question that was asked, we collect impact fees for specific uses, right? And the state tells us how much we can collect for it. So there's actual money that's set aside, impact fees for parks. That money has to be used for parks in those areas.
For new parks.
Right, for new parks, not maintenance or anything. That's construction of the new spaces. So that was the 4.2-ish. We're requiring about $3 million just for maintenance on existing parks. What year was the fee put in place? It was before my time.
I believe it was 2004.
So a long time ago, that $5 was put in place, and at the time, it was probably enough to pay the maintenance of a good majority, but here we are, 15 years later, and it's a fraction now. So it's there and it's helping, but it's nowhere near enough for the maintenance, which I think is maybe a segue to Teddy's question, if we have anything else on parks.
With the county and the county participating. We do get funds from the county from time to time for different things. This last year, we did get, how much was it, a billion plus?
We got 500,000 last year for trails.
For trails, plus we got some for a couple of, the quarter, didn't we get some more for that as well?
yeah.
So we get some money to help build parks and things like that. We've, specifically with the Black Ridge Reservoir, we've had that conversation before many times. It is an option that we have not really ever been, in my opinion, and at least for me, I've never really been willing to truly consider, trying to charge residents for something and not. One of the main reasons for that is because it is a shared facility with Riverton. Riverton helped share the cost of putting that particular facility in, and so we would have to manage that for both cities' residents, and at that point, it becomes almost too much of a hassle to really do it. In the last couple of years, since we had that big brouhaha a couple years ago, it has gotten a lot better. Our management of that facility has helped a lot, and we see a better police presence. We see a lot of other things that have helped mitigate a lot of the problems that we were having with that particular facility. So might there be options? Yes. Are they really something we would probably consider? At least in my opinion at this time, probably not. I go to parks in other cities, and I know that most of our residents use facilities outside of our city and in our city, and it's kind of one of those things where everyone kind of just shares. So at least that's my opinion. If it becomes a problem in a particular facility, I'm sure this council would always be willing to address it again. So if that ever comes up, or if a resident has that concern, we would ask them to let the city know so that we can address that in the future.
Feel free to sit if you need to, Alan, while I drone on, because I think it's a good segue. I'll say, in regards to the reservoir, it predates this council, and we have differing opinions. There's a long history of it. I'll be happy to talk with you offline about some of those things, because exactly what you have mentioned was considered at length, and so I'll be happy to talk to you about that and maybe why some of those decisions were made and some things I think we should do instead. But I think it's a good segue to what Teddy was talking about. What are our plans going forward, right? We've mentioned a few times in this meeting already that we're kind of a cul-de-sac stuck here in the corner. You see how the finances are laid out. Really, the game right now with a developing city is that a good portion of our budget, 40%? Alan, just yell out and tell me if I'm wrong. Rough.
Well, building.
I say 30 to 40% is coming from one-time money from new building permits. And that money is being used to run the city, basically. So once the city's built out, as Teddy pointed out, some of that, if not all of it's going to dry up if we don't have that rate of building. Then how do we provide the critical services that we mentioned earlier, right? So some of these luxury services, that's where there's that give and take. So between now and then, we have to look ahead and try to replace that one-time building money with sustainable sales tax money. And whether that's retail sales tax, phone utility tax, what's it called? It's franchise tax, thank you. And other things, there's a number of ways to do it. Our location gives us a disadvantage, right? Other cities border major transportation corridors. They're on the way somewhere where those things locate. We're not on the way anywhere but home. So we've got just a couple of pockets like the Auto Mall we talked about earlier, a couple other commercial locations. Part of our strategic plan to tie in parks is one of the advantages we have that others don't is our proximity to the mountain and potential recreation that's untapped. As these developments come in, that's also kind of a tug and pull with prior councils. I'll tell you when I was sitting in the audience as a resident, upset because of the decisions that were being made on development, I learned how the process worked, and what those councils struggled with was these developments come in and they want to build housing. Well, we want open space. Well, how are you going to build the open space? The city doesn't own the property. Someone else owns the property. If you want that property, the city has to give up something. They want more density. The more density you give up, the more space they'll give you, and it's that balancing act. So what we have talked about of late, the last several years, the 3 years I've been here so far, is kind of changing our strategy to looking long-term and utilizing the mountain, utilizing partnerships with the county, Yellow Fork Canyon, et cetera, and having true recreation areas, as well as looking at these developments and taking that open space that is being donated and creating larger, more usable spaces where we can attract people to come from other areas, have them come recreate here, spend their money here, and then go home to receive their services. So I hope that makes sense. So that's part of our strategic plan, long run, and that's just part of it. We have Heather and Gordon's economic development team are working hard to bring that retail element, et cetera. So we're looking to really balance that, as well as having other things come in that don't, I hope I don't say this the wrong way, but as Gordon and I talk, one of our planning directors, we want almost anything but homes at this point. If we have employment centers, they pay that property tax we've talked about tonight, but they're not sending kids to school, but they pay the property tax. They might not use as much police services, but they pay that tax. And so if we can balance a lot of those uses, we'll be a lot more sustainable in the future, and that's the direction that we've been working towards the last several years. So I hope that answers most of those questions.
I would also add to that, though, we are running between $7 and $8 million a year in one-time money, which is our building permits and so forth. However, out of this budget and our previous several budgets, we've had about $5 million of one-time expenditures. So it's not the whole $8 million that we have to make up if building permits stop. We would have to stop our one-time expenditures just like we stop our one-time revenues. So it's probably about $3 million gap that we have at this point. And there's a lot of strategic planning going into how we're going to do that. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that, and it was brought up in the comment and it's brought up regularly, why doesn't the city just save up money to do the projects? We are allowed by the state to have no more than 25% of our annual budget saved in our general fund. We can't keep a fund balance of more than 25%.
They literally tell us we cannot save money.
So we have been for several years maintaining a balance of somewhere around 24.8% to 24.9%. We get as close as we can. It's hard to get exact because you have business transacting right to the last minute. But we are saving every dime that the state will allow us to keep. We go over that. We are actually required by the state, if we go over 25%, to put it in our next budget to spend it because we can't keep it. Okay? I'd love to see that changed, but at this point, that's what we have to live with.
Call your state representative.
We cannot save more than 25% of our current expected revenue. It doesn't give us much to do. The state is essentially saying, when you start your budget year in July 1st, you have enough saved that you can get through till property taxes are distributed in November. That's all you can have. Because most cities, most state counties are relying on a November distribution of property taxes. So they can save enough money to get them from July to November. We don't rely on property taxes the way that others do, but we still have made a goal. And we've increased every year and we've made it better every year. But we're as close to the 25% as we can be. Up until 4 years ago, it was 18% that we could have. So we've increased our savings from 18% to 25% over the last 4 years. We're still at the max we can be. So on our current budget, we can actually have in our general fund, rainy day fund, or whatever you want to call it, $7.4 million. It's not very much to run a city that takes $30 million a year for a general fund budget. So we're doing the best we can under the parameters the state allow us to do. They have taken the position that if we have more than that, we're taxing people too high, and we should roll it all back. And so I would love to see us be able to save up for some of them. We do in our impact fees. That's how we do our impact fee for our infrastructure things that we can do through impact fees. We do it that way. But with our general fund money and our general capital projects, we're limited in what we can do.
And even in impact fees are limited to a time frame of 6 years.
Yes, we have to spend the impact fee within 6 years, or we give it back.
Okay. Thank you for that, information. Any further questions or comments by the council?
No, just continued appreciation to our staff and the fine work they do.
So with that, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think we already did that, didn't we? Okay. Now, while our public hearing has been closed on this item, I know all of us as council members of this council are willing to receive any feedback from our residents. We are pretty far along in the process now, as we do need to approve this budget so that we have a fund to run, but please feel free to reach out to us if you have any concerns or comments that you'd like to discuss with us.
Can I add to that, Mayor, also? We just discussed a budget of about $31 million, and we have about 50,000 people in the city, and 2 people have commented thus far. So I would add my voice to the mayor's that if you have questions or concerns or comments, the time is yours in the next couple of weeks to get those to your council representatives so we can address them.
Keeping in mind that we intend to approve it in 2 weeks, and so calling us 20 minutes beforehand won't do you any good.
Well, it's good for discussion. Discussion and education's always good, which I'll just plead to anyone tonight. If you heard anything that kind of gave you an aha moment, oh, well, that makes sense. Oh, well, I understand that better. Please share that with your friends and neighbors.
Okay. All right, we will move on to item 9.2, which has been continued from a couple of meetings, which is a public hearing related to the proposed stormwater utility fee. Blake.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is just, like you said, continuation of the public hearing for the stormwater utility rate fee. We conducted a study. It's to cover the costs for the mandate from the state and federal government to cover the enforcement and maintenance needs for our storm drain. And be happy to answer any questions that may have come up from since the last meeting.
We're being forced to do this. For those that haven't watched the last couple of meetings,
You don't have a choice. And how much is it going to be per average home or average dwelling unit? Or
Right
whatever it's
now,
called?
the recommendation in the report is $7 per home, per single-family home. And then there's a reduced rate for townhomes and an even further reduced rate for condos or stacked housing. And then the commercial, industrial, and city municipal uses will all be based on how many ERUs they have, based on 4,000 square feet of impervious area equals 1 ERU. So if you have 8,000 square feet of parking lot, you'll have 2 ERUs or $14 per month.
And by doing this as a fee as opposed to a tax, we are making sure that we include all entities, including nonprofits and government agencies, that will all have to help pay for the stormwater system, just like our residents will, which will help take that burden off of our residents. Is that correct?
That's correct. It differs from the park fee that we just discussed about how the residents only pay for the park fee. This would be paid for by every entity in the city, schools, churches, the city itself, residents, business owners, and everyone. Commercial users, if you so choose to adopt it this way, will be able to apply for credits if they use low impact development, which is part of the mandate or the permit from the county or from the state. The stormwater permit requires us to encourage low impact development, and so the way we would encourage it is offer credits to commercial and industrial users and schools.
So better parking lots means less money they have to pay every month.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the council? Okay. With this, we will accept public comment or hearing at this point. If you have comment, please come up to the podium and state your name. All right, seeing none. Are we going to continue this again?
I'd like to ask council at this point, after you close this hearing, we've had this on the agenda 3 times.
This is the
now,
3rd time now, yeah.
And we've had open houses on this topic. We're still not ready to adopt what the budget on it. We got to put all that together now. We're coming to you in August. Do you see us still putting it on the agenda for the next few council meetings, or?
I don't, I mean, the last couple of meetings, we haven't had any comments or any feedback. Any suggestions from the planning
I
department?
didn't look at direction, we've not heard any, we've not heard on, you know, we put it out on Facebook, we put it out in our agendas.
We haven't gotten any feedback otherwise.
We didn't have anybody show up for the open house other than myself as a resident, so I'm just trying to get direction from you. We want to make very clear, we got this in front of the public as much as it was possible, give them every opportunity to make comment. And we actually involved the committee, as you heard last council meeting, by residents to be involved in this process, and they were very supportive of how we evolved to this direction.
And at this point, I'm comfortable moving.
So I'll accept a motion.
So the direction would be to put it on for approval probably in August-ish.
So you mean to make that as part of the motion, Jackie? To put it on in August, or just to close the public hearing? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay,
I'll
motion.
second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes, so that has closed. Once again, we're always open to feedback from our residents, even after we've closed a public hearing. Right, we will move on to item 9.3, which has been continued from a previous meeting as well, which is a public hearing and discussion of an ordinance amending and restating the water fee and rate structure. Justin Edwards, who is our Public Works Director.
Mayor and Council, like you stated, this is a continuation similar to the stormwater fee. And we made a presentation last week on the water rate study that was done. We anticipate this being brought to you in June for adoption to go into effect July 1st. Just kind of recap a little bit, it's a 2% increase. So the average household will see around $1 a month increase on their water bill. The last increase we had was 2014. We've been able to sustain our revenues based on growth and keep up with our expenditures. This rate study is not only to make sure we're keeping up with revenues, but make sure we're keeping up with our bond obligations and things. So essentially this is, I think we'll end up closing it if that is okay with you guys after the public comment tonight. So.
And this is expected that this will be sufficient for how many years?
This study goes out for about 4 years. It's a 2% increase every year. We'll obviously review that every year with Alan to make sure that that covers us. But yeah, we're anticipated to be able to cover our revenues with that.
Any questions from council? Okay, with that, we will go ahead and reopen the public hearing for this item. If you have any comments, please come up to the podium and state your name. All right, seeing none, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close. Oh, second, I mean.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I do have one quick comment on that. The easiest way to make sure this rate increase does not affect your pocketbook is to turn off your water. Just more conservation means lower bills.
As much as I hate the weather lately, it's been
Nice
good
for
in
the
that
water bill.
respect.
No reason to be watering your lawn right now. All right, with that, we will move on to our consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Jared?
Aye.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion passes. All right, discussion and action items. Our first item, 11.1, is discussion and consideration of an ordinance adopting the Community Development Project Area Plan entitled Harriman North CRA Project Area Plan and Budget. Dates April 2019. Heather, that's a mouthful.
Mayor and Council, this is the same as the resolution we passed in the previous meeting. So if you'd like, I can give the presentation again, or if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will just sit down.
I'm good.
I'm good too.
Okay.
So just for process sake, at the previous meeting, we were the board for the agency. Now we're the board for the city, essentially. We're the council. And so now we're just approving the same thing for the other entity.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-10, adopting the Community Reinvestment Project Area Plan for the Harriman North Community Reinvestment Project Area.
Second.
Motion and second, Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
I'll vote yes, that motion passes. All right, 11.2, discussion and consideration of an ordinance authorizing a zoning map amendment to rezone approximately 7.5 acres of land located at or near 5200 West Harriman Boulevard from A1 agriculture to C2 commercial. Our city planner, Michael Malloy.
Thank you. We presented this to you in a work session at your last meeting. Again, this was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission in April. And the applicant, Ken Olson, is here tonight if the council has any questions. This is consistent with the general plan. There was an amendment early last year where we looked at some opportunities to change the general plan to encourage more commercial development in our city. And this was one of those areas where we had identified commercial, and the request is consistent with the general plan.
Okay. Any questions by council?
Nope.
I'm ready to accept a motion if you would like.
Motion to approve ordinance 2019-11, authorizing a zoning map amendment to rezone 7.42 acres from A1 agricultural to C2 commercial at approximately 5200 West Harriman Boulevard.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jared?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion passes. With that, we will welcome back Councilman Smith to our meeting. And we'll move on to item 11.3, discussion and consideration of an ordinance authorizing a text change to the land use ordinance to amend the definition of retail tobacco specialty business to include electronic cigarettes and e-cigarettes.
So this is probably the first of several text amendments that we will be bringing to the council in response to recent changes to our state code. And we want to make sure that we're in line with the code. And in this particular case, we wanted to clarify that the state is including e-cigarettes or electronic cigarettes as being part of this definition of retail tobacco specialty business. We had some inquiries whether or not we would allow vape shops in the city, and we felt like we were protected by following the state law, but we wanted to clarify in our own city code that that is a regulated land use, and in Harriman City Code, this type of business is prohibited. It's specifically not allowed in any of our zoning districts. So we just wanted to be very clear and upfront with any businesses that may be looking at that type of land use in our city, how we define it, and that it is a prohibited business.
And this is
in the
not a
city.
change from our previous policy.
Right.
This is simply just updating
Right.
the definition.
Yeah, we're just clarifying that this includes these types of uses.
Question, do we need to include the word vaping in any form?
You know, that is not in the state code. And so it seems like when you look at the definition for these types of uses or this product, it is really clear as far as what these means. So.
Okay. Any questions by the council? I'll accept the motion.
Your turn.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-12, authorizing its text change to the Land Development Code to amend the definition of retail tobacco specialty business.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion passes. Item 11.4, discussion and consideration of an ordinance vacating a portion of right-of-way on Main Street located at or near 4900 West, 12600 South. Blake?
Getting an exhibit to come up. There it is. Oh, not that one.
Wrong property.
This is about 0.45, 0.48 acres, right along 126 South or Harriman Boulevard, immediately on the west side of Mountain View Corridor. And so it's north of 126th, west of Mountain View Corridor. It's a remnant parcel that was left over from right-of-way when we were widening 126th. We won't need it for that purpose anymore. The access points are going to be further back, so we're asking the council to make the motion to vacate this property. When it is vacated, the property will become absorbed into the neighboring property next to it and be part of the new commercial and automall development that is slated for that area. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And this is already zoned correctly?
Is that correct, Michael? Is it zoned? already for, yes.
How large an area?
This,
Just for those
this
that are-
parcel is 0.48 acres. The total area is,
There we go,
Here's
there's
the
a
parcel.
picture.
There we go. Here we
So
go.
just for those that are watching, we've had several discussions about this, so it's this little purple strip, basically, that's left over from when the road was redone. So there's not, you know, there'll be some people who say, well, why didn't you, it's almost half an acre of ground. We've had several kind of unusable, so it's the strip as it is, so it will better serve our needs as part of this. We've had several
and
discussions.
if there is ever a need to take a 2-foot strip or anything for this as the commercial development comes in, that will be exacted back out of that development. So there's always that opportunity in the
Better
future.
serve our
Just
needs as part of this.
piece to the north development. If there is ever a need to take a 2-foot strip
It will
or anything
better serve our needs
development
as
comes
part
in,
of
that will
this.
be and if there is ever a need to take a 2-foot strip that will serve our
City and everything that's going on. So this isn't just us giving them farmland. This is something that's much bigger.
Better serve our needs.
It's part of the whole thing. Every time you have a parcel like this with a strip that is city-owned, developers seem to shy away from those areas because they never know if the city's going to, or the city or municipality, whoever owns that UDOT, is going to give that property back to them. So this makes this much more marketable. It's part of the whole thing.
What I'm trying to say is that the city is not taking a loss here in any way. We're recouping this in other ways.
This property was not purchased because they never know if this makes this much more marketable.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2019-13 vacating a portion of Main Street located at or near 4900 west and 12600 south.
The city is not taking Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
I'll make a motion. Yes.
Passes. Item 11.5, discussion and consideration of a resolution establishing an amount of bond, theft, and/or criminal insurance covering municipal officers and defining the term municipal officers for the bond. Jackie, resolution
Mayor and
establishing.
Council, so as you may be aware, the legislative session that came in, there was a bill 425 that was presented that had outlined some inconsistencies with state, county, and city codes relating to municipal bonds for their officers. In that, it also says, one of the provisions is the city council actually has to set the amount of the bond for the elected officers. It also includes, so it includes the city council, the city treasurer, and then we are also going to include anybody that works for Harriman that is required, that is allowed to sign checks for, on behalf of the city. Those positions right now are the Director of Finance, the Director of Administration, the City Treasurer, who is already going to be covered, and then the City Recorder. These would also, these fidelity bonds would cover basically criminal or theft. Do you guys have any questions about?
It's not going to include the city manager?
The city manager is not a check signer, but if the council chooses to add more positions
Add
to
him.
that, we can.
And this, just to clarify,
It-
what bond in this context means for a residence.
No, so, well, we are gonna add the definition, and then it would go through and say what, the recommended amount of that bond is gonna be $5 million.
But it's more of an insurance than it is of.
It
us
is an
taking
insurance
Taking a
policy.
loan, that's what I mean by,
Yes.
by bond. So sometimes it gets confusing, but this is more of an insurance policy. If a member of, that's covered was to do something that was not, that hurt the city, this would cover that
Correct.
loss to the city.
Correct.
Any
Do you have any
questions by the council?
questions? Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R21-2019, establishing a $5 million bond for theft or crime insurance covering municipal officers and defining the term municipal officers for purposes of bond, theft, or crime insurance.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Jared?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yep.
I will vote yes, that motion passes. All right, we'll have a discussion relating to the development of residential properties owned by Suburban Land Reserve. Gordon's not here, so. Okay,
Well, too bad.
it's our last
Moving
item.
on, and we are out of here.
Okay,
It looks really nice, but maybe we'll just continue this, I'm telling you.
I'm not coming back for another meeting for this. Let's do it now. Closed session too, don't we? Should- Maybe some background, some education. Or if the council wants, we could take a quick break.
Yeah, let's do that. Quick recess.
Want to take a quick 2-minute break and then Gordon will be here?
Okay, okay with that. So let's take a 2-minute recess and be back going in 5. good? Okay. All right. Thank you for the patience of our residents and our staff. We will now move on to item 11.6, discussion relating to the development of residential properties owned by Suburban Land Reserve, or commonly referred to as SLR. Gordon.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate you waiting. I just got back, so I'll try to be calm and collected. And
You just
bring
got
this
off the
all
plane,
everybody. What I want to talk about is two specific properties that are owned by SLR, and the first one I'm going to talk about is a property about 150 acres by 134th South. This kind of shows the location of that. This property, this property is kind of important to us. One of the things that's happening, you can see through the middle of the property, we're building a road right now, and that accommodates the high school, the elementary, and the schools open up on August, end of August. And one of our goals in having this road completed is to get a storm drain system that gets water down to Rose Creek. And one of the things, this system that we're looking at, that we need to build, ends up servicing not just this area, but it services Real, it services the future community college site, and the commercial area, and some of the property even above Mountain View Corridor. And so we've been looking quite a while at a long-term solution to get the water get property and conveyance to Midas, or to Rose Creek. And through the process, we've had discussions with the property owner. There's about 4 acres of property we need to purchase. And at kind of the rate of property right now, it's about $1.5 to $2 million of purchase. So we've been talking to them about ways of getting the property without paying money. We felt that would help us a little bit. And so through the discussion, the idea was, what are they going to do with the property? They don't want to have this in the wrong place. They want to have it accommodate their property and so forth. And so they have now, I believe, are close or under contract with Edge Homes to sell this parcel to them, as well as the property on the Riverton side. And so they've accelerated their design. They've put together what they would like to do with the property. And as part of that, as part of developing the property, they would convey the property as part of their dedication to us. And so we would not have to pay for anything. We could build the system, and it would take care of all the stormwater. And so I kind of wanted to go through this property kind of piece by piece a little bit, what it says in the general plan, what it says with zoning, and the steps we need to go through. And then I'm going to have Edge show what they're kind of thinking with the property, and then kind of answer questions and give you some time to think about it. What we'd like to do, the purpose of this is to get you thinking. They have some concepts that I think would be very beneficial to the city. I'd like to have those kind of thrown out to you, let you kind of wrestle with them. And then we'd like to come back to you in a week at the joint City Council Planning Commission meeting, and kind of, because they're going to be submitting applications, that you could work with them in getting direction on what should happen with these properties as they move forward. So let me kind of go through the current zoning. So the zone of this property, okay, so the A1 is actually commercial, right? That's the zone. Yeah. Not general, that's the zone. Right, but the zone, oh, this is the current zone, that's right, okay. I got it mixed up. So you can see that we have A1. In the lower, kind of darker yellow, this is part of the Rosecrest project, and it had already zoned and is part of the Rosecrest master plan, as well as the elementary school that was put onto the site. So that gives you the current zoning that's out there. And so I asked our staff to look at what the current zoning would do in terms of units. And so I just wanted to kind of go through this so you have it clearly in your mind. Well, no, we have the storm drain master plan. It just shows the drainage that was going through there. And you can see along the canal, the kind of the proposed route we would take through Riverton and also through this property, both owned by SLR, and all the ponds that it would collect from.
Gordon, really quick, those ones that are identified as temporary retention ponds, if we get this outfall solved, do those still stay in place, or do those go away, and what happens if
So
they do go away?
what they'll be, those ponds will stay in place, but they'll be detention ponds as opposed to retention.
Detention, okay.
So right now, they just
Won't
hold
turn into
water.
they won't turn into new housing?
No, those will turn into parks, and so those will be just play area, grass, that kind of thing is what's the intent for those, or native vegetation. The difference is with retention, particularly with, you know, nuisance flow from sprinklers, you end up just making a disastrous mess. There's not a really good way to handle retention, so our ordinance requires us to have detention and flow the water out. Again, this just shows the overall, this is the Rose Crest development that's gone in. It shows the zoning and everything that was put into place. Salt Lake Community College. The area to the very south, the pink and that blue square, turned into RSL, and so we made some modifications to our general plan associated with that. So looking at this specific pod that is owned by SLR, the zoning, this is part of the general, or the master plan. So this is going through their master plan. So one of the questions we looked at is, this had 3.5 to 5 units, which is that medium density, is what was approved, which they already have approved as part of their master plan. Now, a portion of that, about 10 acres, was traded by SLR with the school. And so we were starting to look at what does that do when they do a trade with the property. And so we pulled up a section from the development agreement. And so this is what it says.
Gordon, just really quick, go back one for me if you would. So, just so I'm tracking right, is pod 7A and 7B, is that the area that we're talking about?
Oh, just set 6C, pod 6C, the 41.3 acres.
But is that the A1 that was just on the
It's,
previous?
that one's
page?
currently zoned R215.
This was that little
This is
27.
zoomed in over the previous map, is
So
what
this
you're
is the
saying.
27 acre
Can you just, on the previous map, show us which part?
This is just this.
So that 20, this,
Oh, I was looking at something.
Oh, so confused, okay. So this,
so we're
27
taking this
acres.
into pieces and parts to show you the zoning.
Okay.
So we're just zooming in into that lower piece.
That little 27 acre piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's this medium density, 3.5 to 5 units per acre. So we're talking about specifically the school. And it basically says if they donate for schools, libraries, or other kinds of things, they don't lose the units. However, it says, going down to the bottom, if the master developer sells or conveys such property for financial gain other than tax benefit, the maximum residential units will be reduced by the number calculated by multiplying the acreage of the property sold or conveyed for financial remuneration other than tax benefits. What they did is they traded for property. And so it wasn't a donation. They took land and got land. If they would have donated and not got land, that would be in line with what I would say is you keep the units. Other than that, I think we interpret this, you lose the units. So I'm just giving you some clarification. This is directly out of the development agreement. And this is how they got units for donating the road for Mountain View Corridor. Or they didn't get units, but they kept units. So this is the master plan, not the zoning. And so you can see from the general plan, we showed the portion between Centennial Ridge Boulevard and the canal under the master plan, 1.8 to 2.5 units the acre, low density residential. Above the master plan, above Centennial Ridge, now the property immediately adjacent to the Mountain View corridor is owned by the Jordan School District. So we're not talking about that property. It's approximately 20 acres. I think maybe it's 22 or something in that range. That property is not being discussed, but the property between the school property and Centennial Ridge is owned by SLR, and that property they want to have zoned as commercial, or excuse me, as residential. So if you look at this, this gives you kind of an idea of what the general plan. And so
Master plan.
The master plan, or the master plan of the city. And so what we're gonna look at is I had our staff look at the property between Centennial Ridge and the Jordan School District property, assuming that we would bring in the same kind of zone into it.
Sorry, can you clarify for me?
The red-
You
the red
said,
part?
you said at one point, we were talking about what the master development agreement said, then you just said this is.
Oh,
general
sorry, so
plan.
the master development agreement does not comply, there's no master development agreement on this property.
On this property. So
This is
the
just general plan.
That we're looking at, okay.
Say, no master
This is our
development.
general plan.
Yeah, we only have it on that one lower piece, and that's the Rosecrest one. So the commercial property does not have any units per se from the general plan. It's commercial. So we looked at it as though you would, if you took the option to general plan and extend what was east of Centennial Ridge going to the west. And so if you took the 35 acres, low-density residential, and put in there, so now what you're going to see here is the 3 pods. You see the one that's part of the Rosecrest development, which is 71 to 102, which is the 3.5 to 5 units per acre. The low density, 77 to 107. 63 to 88 is in the commercial. That just gives you kind of a ideas, not, the commercial, of course, is just an idea. That doesn't exist. So I wanted to just give you some ideas. So you can total that up and you end up with approximately 276 units to 421 units over the 138 if you were to take the range of those.
That's what they're currently vested at.
No. No.
That's what they're asking.
That doesn't make sense.
That's just if we, if we extended that same low density, low residential zoning over that piece that they're showing in conjunction with what's already in place.
So just to understand what we're talking about, the request is to move this from commercial to out to.
No request today. We're just showing you if that
Ideas.
was a decision you made. I'm just trying to give you some ideas of numbers. The developer's going to come and talk to you with no numbers, just ideas of what to do with the property.
Okay.
I'm just trying to give you some thoughts. So when you see him, he's not going to talk to you about any numbers tonight.
So basically, the commercial gets split about 2/3 residential.
Yeah, because
and only
the 2/3,
a third goes.
the 25 acres is owned by the school districts. That's not in the discussion tonight. They're not here, so we're just talking about the property owned by SLR.
Which is the little yellow.
But the discussion is basically, what do we want with that specific box right there?
They have
that's
some
yellow?
ideas they want to come back and talk to you about.
Gordon, really quickly, also, have we done a look at the unit count as it relates to the Rosecrest Master Development Agreement and the piece that is still within the Rosecrest development?
Yeah, so that's that lower green piece, the 20.4 acres.
And that's already entitled? That's already part of.
That's
the
all
development.
entitled and has a development agreement over.
My question is where are we on the overall density of
They're way under-
Rosecrest?
They're total.
Way under, okay.
So I'm not going to talk about this next slide too much. This is going to be for later discussion.
Oh, it gives me horrible nightmares.
So this is the other piece of property that SLR owns, and this is also going to be is under contract or close to under contract with Edge. They're working on that right now. So they'll be doing both properties. And so so this is what we received today. They've shown us some various drawings, but this is kind of what their concept is, and I probably want to let Edge, Steve, Maddox talk about what they would envision on this property and kind of what they would see.
Back up on 134th.
This is back to.
134th, though.
Does he have more
Yes.
slides or just this?
Yeah, he keeps going back and forth.
138 south.
My name is Steve Maddox. Gordon's referring to me as Edge, but I actually have a name, which I appreciate, and I will be brief. I feel like we've tried to jam 25 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag. So is there anything that we should back up on and talk about before I proceed? Okay.
One quick question. I mean, obviously, this is just a conceptual plan, and I understand that. But this piece that we talked about, which is west of Autumn Crest or Sentinel, whatever that road is there.
Sentinel.
Which is currently under a commercial zone. That concept plan, to me, looks like it's probably beyond the 1.8 to 2.5.
Single family.
So can you tell me what this conceptual plan has contemplated as far as density in that piece? Or do you know that right off?
Let me run through the general, and then I'll come back to the specific on that. One of the items when we met with staff is they asked me to go back and read the mission statement and the vision statement of what this property would entail. When we met with SLR, they kind of moved us from room to room, where we were specifically said that this will be a legacy project, and they would like us to consider many, many items, including open space, congruency with the schools that are in place, walkability, and four-sided architecture were the key components that we talked about. It was very apparent that the road alignment that had been decided upon early on Autumn Crest, was something that we were not able to manipulate, and that was well into the organization stage, and then ultimately was deeded Friday of last week, which has been a challenge to get that across the finish line, and now is in the city's possession, and then to handle the stormwater that has been accruing from the south that will be flowing to and through not only the residents of Harriman and the border, but we also have to take that through Riverton, which I met with Mayor Staggs this morning, which is a bit of an issue to put another city's water through another city. So we will begin navigating that as well. The overall density that we have, which I don't have conclusive data, is conforming with what Riverton City has approved through an MDA that they signed 2.5 years ago. So what we tried to do is to congregate in separate pods, attached housing, and then spread single family throughout the project. Our overall zone or density on that particular acreage, I don't have. This is high level, 35,000 feet of what we conceptually think that we could do, dealing with the boulevards, traffic, and then open space. If we were to do a PUD, we would have a 20% open space requirement. Just on the aggregate acreage, this is showing less than 11%. So we still have some work to do on open space and product mixing and neighborhood. So the green emerald necklace that you see along the eastern property line would all be city stormwater. It would be about a 20 to 30 foot wide cross section that would handle all of that water, and that would take us all the way through to 134th. So without getting into the specifics, this is a mix of small single family to large single family townhome. Blake had some concerns with how we have residents abutting the schools, so we tried to work with traffic flows. We moved the LDS church site next to the elementary school because we believe that the traffic flows would not conflict and they would be altering on weekend usage and daily usage. So I was telling Bryn earlier, it's a unique piece of property that I will live with for the rest of my life if we get it right, and it'll be something that I believe we can be proud of, and we have a blank canvas today. So we are here in an effort to receive a lot of feedback and get insight into what we want to accomplish. I think the urgency that Gordon is speaking of is that the storm water is flowing today. We are illegally dumping into a temporary basin. I am not convinced that the high school has adequate storage. I am 100% convinced the seminary building does not have any storm capacity at this point. The elementary school has 0. and Autumn Crest has 0 because the system hasn't been set up. As you guys understand, the schools do what and when they want to. So we're working on a timetable that would accommodate that. We will try to work on the design side as quickly as we possibly can and are open to the questions that ultimately will rise.
Sounds like the schools are part of this problem. Are they going to pony up some money to buy this land?
What's that?
Sounds like the schools are part of this problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is just a soapbox for me.
Well, it sounds like they're going to actually, potential of them dedicating the land that we need to complete.
Well, if we
this
give
part.
up more density, which compounds our problems.
So,
No, I understood, absolutely.
Let's talk about this a little bit. And so we recognize that density is a strong issue with the city. And so we've had some discussions with the property owner, and that's why we showed the 2 properties. And if we were to have density in this area versus the area on 118th, there'd be some value if those were reduced. This was closer to infrastructure, that would make sense to us. And so what we want to do, I talked all about density at the beginning of this thing. And so what I'd like to do for the next part of this is talk about what would be kind of a cool use of this property. We're going to have these parks, this open space. We can really do something. There's probably some value in looking at that, but not just a carte blanche density. So once we kind of figure out what makes this look good, then I think there's some discussion to look at a reduction in the city elsewhere over on the 118th property that we could look at, and that would be to address some of the infrastructure concerns that have come in. And it's better to have this, the trips closer to the Mountain View corridor, have the infrastructure closer to it. And so we think that this is going to actually be a benefit to the city in having this density here. And so what I'm going to suggest is have you kind of look at this and talk about some of the details in this in terms of how this land use works. And I want to point out some of the details that came in. When they first came and talked to us, the elementary is set, the high school is set, the LDS church was kind of floating off. And one of the things that we've noticed is very good is when there is overflow and other problems, we had to move the church next to it because it just helps for pickup and delivery and of kids. Across the street from the elementary, where you end up having all those cars parked, we didn't want any driveway, 0. And so initially they showed single-family homes there. And we said, well, what if we mixed up, put more single-family homes and try to blend it with some of the other density? And so we moved it. They moved it. I didn't move any of this. But they, upon looking at that, they put some of the density across the street from the elementary so that now we have no driveways there. Basically, people will be able to park in front of it because they're going to. Instead of blocking driveways, they won't. And they put this single-family homes up by the junior high, so it ends up making the neighborhoods a little bit more blended. They have a large park. They're putting the trail all along Autumn Ridge, which will eventually also accommodate the tracks line. They also have the trail that will extend clear into Riverton as part of the deal along the Welby Jacob. They'll also carry our stormwater. So there's some value in this. And if we look at the density and say overall from a city standpoint, they'll either be reduced, but this area has some value in having a little more density. It will allow the area to be vibrant. It will blend in with what's going into Riverton and to the neighboring area. And so what we'd like you to do is kind of think about this, critique it, say this looks good, no, this we need to change, this doesn't make sense. And at the end of the day, overall, we'll have less density in the city. So that's kind of the goal that I'm proposing here. And not just to put the density here. So if this plan looks good, let's talk about how we make it better. If this plan needs some help, let's keep working on it. What we'd like to do is have you see this first crack of it. But I think overall, this is a huge benefit for the city, taking density that is, higher density rental units, eliminating those, and putting
for purchase closer to the Mountain View corridor, I think is going to be something that's going to be a benefit from the density standpoint. But I think what I'd like Steve to kind of focus on and his team is the design, the use, how this works, roads that won't have, how we make this a great project.
So just so that I understand, basically you're trying to say without saying is that the consideration is that we're going to take density out of that other property, specifically looking at the apartment complex that we're talking about, increase the density over here, but lose apartments over there possibly. Is that
That's what I'm talking about, but I guess what I'd like to do, I probably set the wrong tone because we're talking about the density. So what you said, Mayor, is absolutely correct, but I would like to say what I'd prefer to do is make a great project, look at it, see how we make a great project, and then we end up, then the second part, we'll talk about the density aspect of what do we do to make the city whole, keeping it at a net zero. The thing I don't want to do is talk about, we're moving from here to there. That I don't want neighborhoods feeling like that's part of what we're doing here. That's not the intent, but that will end up happening either way if we want to go this route. So I think there's some value. I think there's some great value to the city in getting a great project here, having it designed out. We think Edge is going to do an outstanding job. They've been very willing to listen to us. They've taken a great deal of care to try to figure out what will work. And we'd like to make this a benefit for our residents.
Go for it, Clint.
Well, just a couple of quick things. First question for you, Gordon. Can you tell me if you know the answer? So north of 138th, which would be the Riverton side.
Yes.
Can you tell me how they currently have that zoned?
I don't know the zoning. Yes, let me have.
I'll tell you, we're not interested in matching it.
Yeah. What's that?
We're not interested in matching it. I'll say that flat out.
I'll just say it is higher. It's an accumulation of what Center Cal has done, and then they've got an overall density that can be moved on the property. So it can go
So
as
it's
high
all
as,
part of the Center Cal.
is, so it can go up to 22 units to the acre in some portions, which would be taking density from the north side, and it can be transferred. So it is allowed to be used in the project. We are designing it almost identical in conformity to what is happening here. Probably the only difference would be that there are 2 church sites on the property, but the mix is going to be very congruent with what we are proposing here tonight.
Okay. Really, then the second comment that I'll really make is, one, we want every project in Harriman to be a great project, not just this one. And I don't think it was meant that way, but we want every project to enhance the city. And and this is a very important piece to the city, where it does transition from us to Harriman. It's right next to the corridor. It's obviously going to be surrounding a brand new high school, a brand new elementary, and potentially a future junior high site. So there's a lot going on here and a lot to contemplate as we look at how much traffic will be in this area because of the uses that are already there, let alone what's potentially planned. But part of the discussion, Gordon made the point, and I appreciate it, but I want to be very clear. We're talking about a good project and density. Make no mistake, density is part of that discussion. That's something that we've been very focused on over the last couple of years is density. I'm intrigued, I guess, by some of the ideas that are proposed. Obviously, we know the SLR piece that's out off 118th and what entitlements there are that currently exist on that land. So, but overall, again, the main thing is to get the right balance for the city. And so in order to have I think a true discussion about not only a good project, I think we absolutely have to be able to understand what those density numbers are, what is contemplated here, whether it's over the entire land, whether you kind of break it down into pods. That's certainly something that I need to be able to understand is what is being proposed here, how that potentially affects the other piece, because, I mean, let's really kind of call it what it is. In some regards, we are talking about potentially decreasing density on one parcel in the city to potentially increase it on another. I don't want to not call that really what it is. But again, there may be some true benefits to being able to do that and to put it near some of the infrastructure. So as part of the discussion, I think we just need to be very clear on what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and those density numbers have to be very clear of what it is that we're proposing here versus what's entitled there and what that means in terms of zoning moving forward. Again, I think that has to be part of the whole discussion, because if I was just to look at this that sits in front of me as it stands today, I would say that, to me, there's too much density in there. But again, I know as we're talking about both parcels and some potential moving, some potential benefit to the city to do that, I need to be able to understand what it is that we're really talking about in order to be completely educated. But again, my initial look at this is, especially on this piece that's currently zoned commercial, I would say that for me, especially surrounding those schools and potential school sites, it looks too dense to me currently.
Okay.
I
And
think
we can get into specifics. A couple of the items that we were charged with is creating a cross-section that would facilitate light rail. We have a 30-foot, which is the largest park strip that exists today, on both sides of Autumn Crest, which chews up about 7.5 acres. So the scale here, just to take things into perspective, we're 215 acres, including the schools. The residential portion is about 110 acres. So part of the scalability of this is everything that looks like a traditional park strip is jumbo-sized, and we're trying to accommodate future growth, traffic, and connectivity to everything that exists in this area. So we have some unique challenges and opportunities here that we would really like to exploit to maximize this as a real center point for the future.
I think we can kind of make this conversation fairly quick tonight. It sounds like this is far from being in a position for us to talk detail. If the question is, are we willing to consider this concept? I'm willing to consider anything, any option, but I want to consider all options. So, I mean, I'm willing to consider what kind of the base of what's being proposed. There's some merit to some of the points made, but there's some serious concerns too, and to come in to show us a pretty picture that right away we know has half of the open space that's required. I mean, it's not worth talking about this map, but we're talking about the concept is what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm willing to discuss the concept, but I want to make clear, I want to discuss all options.
And I think that's great. And I think
I concur.
what I'd like you to do is, the purpose of this was to make sure you saw this, heard these concepts here in a public meeting tonight, and then what we want to do is present this next week to you and the Planning Commission so that you're talking and you can give them clear direction on how to go forward, because they're getting ready to submit applications, and we want you to help them know which direction you want to go. Things I want you to think about as we prepare for that meeting is right now, even though we show a junior high there, there's indications that that's not going to happen. That's commercial, so maybe what's back next to it makes sense. And we're also talking about transit, and so we're talking about where do we want the transit hub and what should be adjacent in front of that. And so as you think about those concepts, we'll prepare a full thing, but we didn't want to do all that if you just started throwing things at us. So I think we've probably beat this one to death.
Okay. Any other comments by the council?
No, I appreciate, I just echo what everyone else has said.
So from a concept.
We'll see you next time on the same bat channel, same bat.
All right, future meetings we do have a meeting next week, May 29th, joint city council and planning commission meeting, where it looks like we'll be talking about this item. June 6th is the next planning commission meeting, and June 12th is our city council meeting, which then we do have the Memorial Day breakfast coming up on the 27th. It will be at Main Street Park behind the old City Hall, or the Harriman Community Center now. That will begin at 7 a.m. There will be a Memorial Day ceremony held at the cemetery down the street at 9 a.m. And then we do have on May 31st and June 1st, we have the PRCA Rodeo that we host every year at Butterfield Park. That will begin at 7:30 p.m. both nights. June 1st is also National Trails Day. Other than that, I will accept a motion to adjourn our work meeting and go into closed session.
Is that correct, Brett?
Is that correct?
Brett? Do we have it closed?
Yes, we do.
Right here.
It's, yeah.
Where did we go?
Litigation and property was.
Okay. Go. A motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to convene in a closed session for the purpose to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated 52-4-205.
A second.
Motion is second. Jared?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion passes. We will be moving into closed session. In closed session, we will be in our other room.
Justin?
You don't have to stay here. You can go now.